Join me as we talk the top 10 defenses for week 7 of fantasy football and the best defense for week 8 who may be dropped to the waiver wire this week. Because this is no BS fantasy football, we're going to jump right into number 10, the Miami Dolphins defense. I know some of you out there being like, do you really trust this Miami Dolphins defense? And I'll tell you, I trust the matchup. I'll go into the matchup tab on the Walter Picks app. You see they've been a very favorable to fantasy football defenses, giving 7 to the Bengals defense, 13, 8, 19 to the Lions, and last week 10 to the Steelers. So far, this has been a very favorable matchup for defenses, and the Dolphins defense honestly hasn't been that bad. Yeah, they faced Daniel Jones week 1, Josh Allen week 3, Justin Herbert week 6, and they had bad weeks, but when they faced New England, the Jets, and the Panthers, they had solid weeks. So that's why I'm going with the Dolphins at number 10. Number 9, I've got the Green Bay Packers, who honestly have been pretty bad this year. They hit us with that classic trap. A great week 1 performance where they looked unstoppable, and since then they've honestly been pretty bad, and that's why they're so low on my list this week, because I'm actually looking at their performance. I'm not looking at the week 1, I'm not looking at the players on the team, I'm looking at their actual performance. And this week against the Bengals was supposed to be an amazing matchup, and they dropped us 2 points. The week before against Dallas, they dropped us -3 points, but I will go to the matchup tab because this week they're facing the Cardinals. They've been pretty favorable so far this season. Weeks 1 through 3, not great for defenses, but week 4, week 5, and week 6, not too bad. We had Jacoby Brissett week 6. Green Bay this week, it is a more favorable matchup. I will say that. Green Bay, they haven't been the best, so some people are going to have them ranked higher, but with that performance, with the matchup, I've still got them at number 9. And what a bounce back for the Rams. They're my number 8 defense on the week, and I know some people said after week 5, never again. But again, on this page, we look at the actual performance of the teams. We look at the actual matchups, and despite a bad performance in week 5, we had them in the top 10 again week 6, and they absolutely dominated with 17 points. In this week, they're facing a pretty good matchup. They've got a good matchup against the Jaguars, who just gave up 11 points to the Seahawks and 7 points to the Chiefs. Now, so far at the beginning of the season, they didn't do as well. They weren't as easy a matchup, but teams are starting to figure out how to stop this run attack of the Jaguars, how to stop the pass attack. I mean, Brian Thomas Jr. had his best game of the season, and the Seahawks still dropped 11 fantasy points. And when we go back to the game log for the Rams, they've had a lot of good weeks, 11, 8, 17. So when they face some of the easier matchups, no, they didn't do great against the Eagles. They didn't do great against the Colts. They didn't do amazing against the 49ers, which was a little bit of a surprise game with Kendrick Bourne absolutely popping off. This week, they know what to expect. They know who they have to take away, so I am trusting the Rams this week. As we get to number 7, if you are new to the channel and want detailed breakdowns like this every single week, hit that subscribe button. We're here to help you win a fantasy football championship. And if you're returning, hit that like button. Just takes 2 seconds and is a huge support to the channel. Let's talk the Philadelphia Eagles. This is another team that has been struggling. Some people will be like, I'm never trusting them again. They've been actively hurting my team. But let me tell you why they're a great start in week 7. We see the matchup. That's where we want to start with these defenses every single week. And Minnesota so far has been extremely weak. It could be Carson Wentz. JJ McCarthy is also supposed to return to practice. Hopefully JJ McCarthy is the starter, because that would be where the Eagles have an amazing week and it would bump them up this list even more. But so far, Minnesota has been extremely weak. And when you look at who the Eagles have struggled against, that is what separates this page from other pages, because I bet you don't see this analysis anywhere else, and it's the rushing quarterbacks. Against the Rams and against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they've done pretty well. Those are static in the pocket quarterbacks, but against Denver, they've got Bo Nix, a good rushing quarterback. The Giants, a good rushing quarterback, but week 7, they do not have to face a good rushing quarterback. If JJ McCarthy's back, that would again upgrade us even more with the matchup, and facing a better fit for this Philadelphia Eagles defense, you gotta lock them in this week. On to number 6, we've got the Seattle Seahawks defense that's been absolutely incredible. We head over to the game log. This is a team you need to hold for the entire season. They're going to have some great games. Doesn't matter who they face. They've even had some injuries with Devin Witherspoon and still been an amazing defense. So they're going to have some even better defense going forward. And when we look at the matchup tab, Houston has been good these last 2 weeks, facing the Titans team, whose offense is terrible, putting so much pressure on the defense, and facing the Ravens, whose defense has been terrible. So they've been a bad matchup for some bad defenses. The Houston Texans have not been a too bad matchup for defenses. I think Seattle corrects that this week, where the Texans have looked overly good, playing some bad defenses or some bad offenses. This week they faced Seattle, who's been a good offense and a great defense. So I'm locking them in the top 6. Number 5, and I know some of you may expect them to be higher on this list, but I gotta show some respect to their matchup this week. But let's start with the Denver defense. they've been amazing. Week 1, 14 points. They struggled against Daniel Jones in week 2, but since then, 7, 10, 7, 13. They've been absolutely incredible. So Denver, a top-tier defense you want to play each and every week. I would not drop them for any of the top 4. They're a team you want to hold through the whole season. But I do want to show the matchup tab. The Giants have been a lot better with Jackson Dart. Now, week 5, they had so many turnovers. That's why I'm still trusting this Denver defense. But week 6, they were insane. Jackson Dart looked great. Cam Scottaboo was amazing. This Giants team seems to be unlocked with Jackson Dart at quarterback, which makes me slightly more worried than maybe some other pages are. They just look at Denver, they look at the Giants, they say easy matchup. They're not really looking at the recent games where Jackson Dart against the Eagles and Cam Scottaboo against the Eagles were absolutely incredible. So Denver, I think they're a great start this week. Again, I've got them top 5, but I'm not putting them any higher with how good the Giants have looked with the recent game. Just missing the podium, I've got the Cleveland Browns, and they do have the Dolphins this week, and I know that may be a little bit of a tough matchup. I'll head over to the matchup tab. They did give up 8 points to the Chargers and 3 points to the Panthers. I think that those are the weeks we really want to look at because Tyreek Hill is now out for the season. We look at the game log. They didn't do well against the Steelers, the Browns defense, because Aaron Rodgers didn't get sacked and they didn't turn the ball over. That's something the Steelers have been emphasizing, doing a lot better job of. Honestly, I did expect them to give up some sacks, but very impressed they didn't. But the Dolphins, too, has been struggling with turnovers. He has been turning over the ball in bunches, despite what he says. He says that's a crazy comment from the reporter a couple weeks ago, but he continues to do it. Multiple interception games. This team is falling apart at the seams. So I am going to lock in this Cleveland Browns defense this week. Onto the podium, we've got the Pittsburgh Steelers at number 3. They've been excellent these last few weeks, really improved from early on in the season when they honestly weren't that good. We go over to the matchup tab as well. And, you know, the Cincinnati Bengals, they looked a lot better with Joe Flacco at quarterback. Unfortunately, we're not getting the Jake Browning experience. Mike Tomlin was pretty upset about that. But I still think that this week, with the Steelers having a week to watch how the Bengals want to play with Flacco, and with their improved defense, they're an amazing start this week. As we talk about the silver medal, the Chiefs, we go over to the matchup tab because that's where the action is at here, because the Raiders, they're honestly terrible against defenses. They did play the Titans in week 6, who still put up 5 fantasy points, but they gave up 13, 11, 8, 15. Plus the Chiefs, we go to the game log, they've been pretty decent as well. You know, they did do great against the Chargers that were fully healthy, against a fully healthy and functioning Eagles team, against Detroit. Yeah, those are 3 very tough matchups, but against weaker matchups like the Giants, the Ravens, and the Jaguars, they've been solid, so you have to lock the Chiefs in this week. Number 1, and we'd still have that amazing defense for week 8, so stay tuned, but this week it's the New England Patriots, who have been pretty solid on defense. But let's talk about the real magic here. The gift of the week. They play the Tennessee Titans. Look at how much points the Tennessee Titans have been giving up. That makes this a no-brainer. And now let's talk about that defense for week 8. You may have guessed it. Our week 8 defense that I would stash, honestly, to give you a huge advantage is the Colts. We see week 6, they struggled. Week 7, they have the Chargers. So some people will be dropping them to the waiver wire because they don't follow this page. They don't subscribe to this channel. So they're not looking ahead. Because you see week 8, they play the Tennessee Titans. This is a huge advantage. We just looked about how many points the Titans have been giving up to defenses. This is a move that could absolutely win you your week. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button to get this video every single week.